All right, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to my Capstone product proposal. I'm Phil Brunner, and I'm a DSW student in the clinical social work concentration here at UK. I'm excited to share the overview of my Capstone product proposal with you today, which I have visualized through this conceptual map. At the heart of my Capstone project is a critical challenge in social work, the persistent theory to practice gap in delivering evidence-based practices, particularly within substance use treatment in real-world, resource-constrained agency settings. My decade of experience working across numerous agencies in Buffalo, New York has consistently shown me how this gap impacts frontline therapists and, most importantly, clients. Supervisors often prioritize administrative tasks over meaningful feedback on intervention efficacy, leaving therapists without clear guidance on practical skill application. The urgency of this issue is magnified in substance use clinics, where effective and consistent intervention can be life changing for clients. This project seeks to bridge this critical gap, ultimately enhancing client outcomes and fostering justice informed care. My capstone journey began with a systematic literature review, or SLR, which aimed to comprehensively understand the factors influencing therapeutic effectiveness and intervention fidelity in substance use treatment within real world, resource constrained agency settings, with a distinct emphasis on common factors and therapist competency. My search strategies involve keywords like theory to practice gap, therapist competence, intervention fidelity, substance use treatment, resource constraints, constrained settings, common factors, and implementation science. The SLR aimed to identify research supporting the profound impact of what I'm calling minimalist assets, core therapeutic elements like empathy and genuine care, even when formal EBP execution is not at its highest level of fidelity. The SLR confirmed the pervasive nature of this theory to practice gap. It revealed the inadequate training and supervision often lead to a dilutive application of EBPs, resulting in suboptimal outcomes. Importantly, it highlighted that successful EBP implementation isn't just about the intervention itself, but crucially about the context in which it's delivered, including practitioner competence and ongoing training. A key gap identified was the disconnect between research often performed by experts with high competence and reality for many frontline therapists who admit they aren't effectively taught or consistently graded on intervention use and often lack useful supervision. This spurred the core ideas for my conceptual paper. My conceptual paper is grounded in understanding that effective social work practice, especially in complex areas like substance use, requires bridging theoretical knowledge with practical application in challenging environments. It acknowledges that effective EVP delivery is not solely dependent on external support, but also on the clinician's ability to integrate their personal and professional selves amidst demanding practice realities. My perspective is deeply rooted in a pragmatic, justice informed epistemological recognizing that solutions must be effective in the real world for diverse clients. To address the identified problem, I draw primarily from implementation science and common factors theory. Implementation science emphasizes that successful adoption of EBPs depends heavily on context, organizational support, and practitioner competence. Common factors theory posits that shared therapeutic elements like empathy, genuine care, and active listening, what I term minimalist assets, are highly impactful regardless of the specific EBP. My innovative approach also introduces the concept of internal intersectionality. This acknowledges that clinicians' personal biases, emotional response, or vicarious trauma can inadvertently compromise consistent intervention application. This recognition is crucial for holistic understanding of the theory to practice gap. The conceptual paper argues that by intentionally focusing on strengthening these minimalist assets and developing a practical strategy for their consistent application, while also addressing systematic implementation barriers, therapists can still achieve significant positive client outcomes even when full EVP fidelity is compromised. These theories provide a robust lens. Implementation science helps us understand the systemic pressures, while common factors offers a pathway to consistent effectiveness by highlighting universal therapeutic ingredients. Blending these along with the lenses of intersectionality, strength-based practice, and cultural humility allows for a more adaptable and just approach to intervention implementation. Acknowledging the unique barriers and needs of clients and their environments, This means creatively adapting how interventions are implemented, focusing on what works for each client. So we may be strict on the goals, but not with the objective. This is where we can get creative. The practice application paper translates these conceptual ideas into actionable strategies. My core recommendation is the development and implementation of a justice-informed self-assessment tool for therapists. This tool, grounded in implementation science, would help therapists maintain adherence to minimalist assets, empathy, non-judgment, rapport building, and culture of humility. It provides crucial feedback when external supervision is limited, empowering therapists to self-correct and continuously align with these most impactful elements of therapy. Beyond traditional self-assessment, I also propose exploring the potential of AI-powered fidelity feedback systems. Given that many therapists are not adequately trained or graded on interventions and often lack useful supervision, AI could be a transformative asset. AI algorithms can analyze session recordings, or transcripts, identifying key intervention elements and assessing adherence to protocols. This offers objective, scalable feedback, reducing human bias and providing critical insights, even when traditional supervision isn't available. Studies show it's feasible for MI and CBT analysis. The AI-driven feedback on process could be coupled with accessible measures of client progress in areas like anxiety, depression, and substance use. If client outcomes aren't improving, AI could help pinpoint areas in the therapist's fidelity to minimal assets or core intervention components that need adjustment, guiding them on where they make changes, empowering them to figure it out and enhance their impact. The implication of this comprehensive approach are important for the social work field. For practice, it offers a realistic and sustainable pathway for therapists in resource constrained settings to enhance their effectiveness. For education, I advocate for curriculum change, proposing that social work programs indicate training on AI in clinical practice, focusing on its potential for supervision and personalized professional development. For policy change, I recommend that licensing boards, regulatory bodies, and funding agencies explore and pilot AI-driven fidelity assessment programs and advocate for self-assessment tools in classrooms and agencies. And for future research, I call on researchers to examine how interventions are truly used in the real world, identify the basic elements essential for effectiveness under conditions of burden like the caseloads, and investigate how these findings can further bridge the research practice gap. In summary, a Capstone project tackles the persistent theory to practice gap in substance use treatment by proposing an integrated framework. This framework leverages the power of foundational minimalist assets and innovative AI-driven feedback alongside systemic policy and curriculum changes. The ultimate goal is to empower therapists in resource-constrained settings to achieve justice-informed, effective client outcomes. This integrated conceptual map has been my guide, showing how the systematic literature review informs conceptual papers and innovative ideas, which then translates into the actual practice application. It's a pathway towards ensuring that every client, regardless of setting limitations, receives the most impactful and ethical care. Thank you for your time and attention. I'm now open for any questions that you might have about my proposal or the conceptual map.
I have a question about your systematic literature review. I was just wondering what the exclusion criteria was for you in that search.
What did I use for exclusion criteria? What did I use? Uh, I think just a lot of just MI and CBT in substance use treatment generally, where I didn't want just the regular standard research done because it's usually done by like high level professionals. Do you know what I mean? I was looking for like nuances.
With the like long history of substance use treatment, what was your range that you used for years with publications?
I think there was some struggle there with trying to stay within the last 5 years. So I think I might have ventured out to 10 years. This has been going on for decades, so I felt safe staying within 10-year frame. So I think I limited myself to 10 years. There might be like one or two that exceeded that. just
Thank
because MI came out quite a while ago. So I think it's, one of the most research based interventions for substance use. So, it goes back far, but there's current research on it as well, too.
you. Thank you.
I don't have any questions because you explained everything pretty well. And she asked the one question that I did have, but I did want to say good job on like starting out. This is super nerve wracking. So the fact that
Thank
it's
you.
that in depth already is pretty great.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thanks for starting out. And I also don't have any questions.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tylesia Bonner, and my concentration is clinical social work. My capstone project centers on a population often left out of clinical focus, siblings of children with chronic illness or disability. These individuals, sometimes referred to as glass children, often experience emotional neglect, role confusion, guilt, and suppressed needs due to families' emphasis on the ill child. Despite growing recognition of family systems in clinical care, there's still a significant gap in services tailored for these siblings. My work seeks to uncover, define, and address their unique emotional and relational needs. This topic matters not only to me, but to the social work field at large, because when we overlook one part of the system, we compromise the whole. Next slide, please. My first product is a systemic literature review that explores existing knowledge about the experiences of siblings growing up with a chronically ill or disabled sibling. To conduct this review, I searched through the University of Kentucky's library database and Google Scholar, which connected me with research databases like PsycInfo or PubMed. I used search terms such as glass children, healthy siblings, chronic illness, disability, family dynamics, and emotional impact. Inclusion criteria focused on studies from the year 2000 onward that examined psychosocial outcomes with an emphasis on qualitative and mixed method research. I excluded studies that solely focused on parental experiences or clinical conditions not directly tied to sibling dynamics. These findings highlight consistent themes: emotional invisibility, protective role taking, guilt, loneliness, and long term relational effects in adulthood. A major gap in the literature is the lack of theory driven interventions that directly address the needs of these siblings within a clinical or therapeutic framework. My second product, the conceptual paper, seeks to frame this issue using both critical race theory and systems theory. System theory supports the understanding that no family member operates in isolation. When a child is ill or disabled, the entire system adapts, but not always equitably. Critical race theory reminds us that marginalized identities, such as a sibling in a lower income or racialized families, face compounded barriers in accessing emotional support. I propose an innovative conceptual approach that integrates trauma informed care with a sibling centered lens. Instead of treating these siblings as a passive bystander, we have to recognize them as active participants whose voices need validation and whose trauma, although it is secondary, needs acknowledgement. The integrated framework challenges clinicians to look beyond the primary diagnosis and consider the family ecosystem as a whole. My third product focuses on applying the concept to clinical practice. In this practice application paper, I argue that inclusion of sibling focused assessments and support plans in pediatric and family based settings. This includes psychoeducations for parents, therapeutic groups for siblings, and collaboration across schools and hospitals to identify support these children early. For example, if a child is receiving oncology treatment, the healthy sibling should also receive therapeutic check-ins, standardizing this as a part of the holistic care model. This shift will require updating intake protocols, revising trauma screening tools to include sibling-specific questions, and advocating for insurance and policy change to fund these services. The implications extend beyond clinical practice to education, healthcare, and policy. Recognizing the sibling experience could reduce future mental health costs and improve family functioning across time. My integrated concept map visualizes all three of my capstone products and how they connect through a central problem of unmet emotional needs in siblings of children with chronic illness or disability. It shows how the literature review identifies the gaps, the conceptual paper offers a trauma informed theoretical framework, and the practice paper suggests specific clinical implications. At the center of the map, it has proposed a shift toward a new standard of care, on one that validates the sibling's experience as a legitimate site for intervention and support. This framework is a call to action for clinicians to reorient their practice, for agencies to expand their scope, and for policymakers to consider long term emotional effects of chronic illness on the entire family. To conclude, my capstone project elevates experiences of a too often overlooked population and offers structured theory and a theory informed path forward. By addressing these siblings' emotional and relational needs, we can improve not only their outcomes, but the overall resilience of families facing chronic illness or disability. And I look forward for this research to grow and that I'm welcome to any feedback. Thank you.
That was awesome. I like that. I just know that when we have a lot of these ideas to help people, like what for you is the best way to make this accessible to siblings, or how do you make them aware of the resource, or how do you reach them?
I think it really starts with us or the people doing the intakes, like including questions that say, are there any additional siblings in the home when they come in to give complex diagnoses for like cancer or like spina bifida or things like that? Just thinking about how it will impact all the other individuals in the home and starting there acknowledging the other kids and saying like, oh well, we have services for this and some family therapy and things that will help them process their trauma as they're going along this with their sibling.
Thank you.
Any additional questions?
I am going to second Phil's compliment. I think that it was awesome. The concept map was really well put together. It was just visually fun to look at and was really, really clear. Um, I did have two small questions. You had mentioned that it would be like applicable in not just practice settings, but also in education policy. So I'm first was wondering in what ways you see this as extending into education, whether that's social work education or also into educational settings as well.
I see it transferring into social work education as a means of us to already, like if we're on a clinical track, a means for us to start thinking about those things ahead of time, just kind of integrating it into different pathways, such as I know that some like MSW programs have like a specific school social work thing, and that might change drastically how a school social worker impacts or interacts with a student whose sibling has like stomach cancer or like a child that has like severe autism or is like in a severe and profound special needs class at the school. That might change how the counselors or social workers interact with that student on the education level, and it might even transfer into how we look at their truancy and what services might be offered to the students. It might be difficult to focus on a test when you know your brother is going through some life-changing procedure that will either kill him or, you know, keep him alive a little bit longer to be your sibling. And so just seeing how all of that translates in, and then like the case managers and social workers could contact the school and be like, hey, we're working with them on this, so if you have some emotional support at school, this might help them in their academic journey as well.
That makes a lot of sense. And as I'm listening to you talk, and when you were talking about the policy implications also with the long-term consequences for the kids, I'm wondering what plausibility there might be for healthcare coverage for the child who does not have the disability adjacent to that child because with disability, you have more accessibility to IEPs, 504s, as well as to state-funded insurance. Um, so I can definitely see that spectrum. I really appreciate you offering that kind of clarity there. Um, and my second question was, where do you think this will take future research?
That is what I am still trying to figure out, and I hope to answer over the next 2 semesters. I hear people throw around the term glass child a lot, but no one really focuses on what is the emotional weight that this glass child is bearing. And so I've just spoken to a few people after I selected this topic, and I was like, hey, I know you have a disabled sibling. Like, how do you feel like this impacted you? And they have this whole laundry list of like, things that they feel like they can never do or complain about or talk about because they're the child that's well. Like their parents don't even see them as like equal to this system. It's like you're not chronically ill, so you can figure it out. It will be okay. And so just giving a voice to the voiceless is one way that I'm trying to go with it, but also just setting a new standard of care where if a child is chronically ill, then making it not all about the siblings, but focusing on that secondary trauma that comes from that. Because if a child's parent is sick with cancer, of course you're going to offer counseling and all of the things because it's their parent. But it also applies the same with siblings in the home as well. It's just as traumatic.
Absolutely. Yeah, that sounds like a really great direction. And I can hear that with some of those unknowns, it's hard to see where the future is going to be headed, but this seems like a really great path. So I appreciate you taking the time to answer my questions.
No problem.
Excellent. Alrighty. So my name is Kelly Capitini, and I am a student in the DSW Clinical Social Work program, and I am going to be reviewing some information regarding the perinatal mental health disparities in autistic birthing parents. And so my capstone overall is going to answer three key questions related to perinatal mental health disparities. The first will be through the systematic literature review, which is going to address how perceived perinatal experiences of autistic birthing parents correlate with mental health outcomes. So this is going to examine what we already know, what is already out there. And so for this search, I utilized the UK libraries. I used Google Scholar, and I also used the National Health Institute. I included any peer-reviewed literature and also first-hand accounts from 2015 to 2025, so using the past 10 years, due to some of the limitations with literature that had been available specifically related to autistic parents, but also related to autistic therapeutic experiences as well. I included any studies that were in English and had to exclude any that were not translated or translatable into the English language. Um, I focused only on adults for this, so any studies that included adolescent pregnancies for autistic birthing parents were excluded from this review. I focused on some keywords such as perinatal mental health, um, autistic birthing parents, autistic mothers, um, perinatal depression, postpartum anxiety, perinatal trauma. And from this literature review, I identified some gaps in the literature specifically related to what we can actually do to support these parents during the perinatal period. And so my next product of this is the conceptual paper, where I'm going to focus on how neurodivergent affirming alternatives to trauma-informed care can address mental health treatment gaps for autistic birthing parents. What we do know is that trauma diagnoses in autism spectrum disorder are much more complex than with the general population, And trauma-informed care negates a lot of the information that we already know regarding the neurodiversity of autistic birthing parents and the autism community in general. And so by using a critical disability lens, we are going to focus on the voices of those people who are most affected by therapy and trauma-informed care. Um, and there is a smaller branch off of critical disability theory called critical autism theory, which specifically focuses on neurodiversity to be able to identify how changes in our cognition, how differences in our emotional experiences and expression can impact the trauma-informed lens. So that way we can come up with the alternative, the neurodivergent affirming alternative within a therapeutic setting. And then we're going to take that and apply it to clinical interventions for autistic birthing parents during the perinatal period. So the practice application paper is going to address how autistic birthing parents can inform their own evidence-based neurodivergent affirming intervention for perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, as well as reducing trauma. We are going to use a collective case study. So I will be using questionnaires for the autistic birthing population to be able to explain their experiences, talk about what it was like to give birth, experiences with perinatal healthcare providers, including in medical settings as well as in a therapeutic setting, identify some of those themes. What was a protective factor? What were factors that caused harm? And what some of those experiences were with being diagnosed with a perinatal mood and anxiety disorder and trauma. And from that, we're going to use that to inform a solution-focused brief therapy model with the neurodivergent affirming lens. So solution-focused brief therapy is one of the treatment models for perinatal mood and anxiety disorders that has also been used and found effective for working with the neurodivergent communities. And then we will take that solution-focused brief therapy model and use it to inform not only clinical practice, but also the field of social work education. So that way it can also be applied to other models of treatment as well. And in medical settings, for providers to consider a neurodivergent affirming alternative to their trauma-informed care when providing services to the autistic community. And since adults with autism have historically been underserved, we have spent a tremendous amount of time and effort focusing on children. There are a lot of limitations and gaps in the research. So, for future research purposes, it's going to be really important that we take some of this information and use it to bolster the other areas for intervention strategies outside of the specific nature of perinatal mental health conditions and use that to inform additional intervention models, and hopefully be able to reduce some of the mental health concerns that this particular population has faced and some of the limitations that they've experienced with the current intervention models that are currently available. So if anyone has any questions, I would be happy to answer them to the best of my ability.
I don't have any questions, but I was wondering, what do you think about the applied behavioral analysis program, which is starting to be hyper focused on those with autism? Is there anything that you can pull from that to use for this?
So, when it comes to ABA, it is a very controversial model, and even the autistic community is really divided on the application of it because of its social construct lens. It is focused more on adapting the behaviors of autistic people to those that are more socially acceptable. I do think that there are behavioral strategies that could be used to support individuals. Um, but as a blanket, I think that avoiding ABA is the most aligned with a critical disability and critical autism theory to promote the voices of the autistic population and start to move away from some of those social constructs.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing awareness to of this subject to us.
You're welcome.
I do have a question as well. So, is one of the goals like with this for like their voice to be heard? As far as within services, people will sometimes make comments saying like, "Oh, well, if you're already struggling with these things, then maybe you shouldn't try to be like a parent or something like that." So, is this to advocate for their people too, and there's nothing wrong with them reproducing or whatever the case is?
Yeah, that is a huge part of it. From the literature review, what we do know is that there has been a longstanding history since the inception of eugenics with forced sterilization and prohibiting adults with autism from being able to have a voice in reproductive health care. So, a big part of that could definitely be informing policy change because at this time there's a startling number of states where um, forced sterilization is still legal out of the 50 states, and um, there are only two that actually have policies that explicitly um, make forced sterilization illegal. So two of 50, which means that 48 states it's still possible. So I absolutely think that this would be able to provide a lens for advocacy, not only with forced sterilization and this systematic eugenics history that we have, but also with supporting them to be able to use their own voice and make those decisions in an informed and strength-based way.
Thank you for answering my question. This is a really great topic.
Thank you.
The question kind of aligns similar with Alicia's. I was just asking how you plan to incorporate youth voices in here.
You said youth voices?
Well, the autistic birthing parents' voices.
Yeah, so in the practice application, the collective case study that I'm going to be using is I'm actually going to be having questionnaires completed, and I will be using that to compile into a single case study using the responses from those questionnaires to be able to um, allow that paper to give voice and also to inform that solution-focused brief therapy model that I propose at the end and make recommendations for future research and also for future policy consideration in the language that they used in those questionnaires.
Awesome, that's wonderful. Thank you for answering that.
Thank you.
Uh, what guidance are you using for developing the questionnaire?
So I am currently working with Dr. ER and the IRB to get my application approved, but also to get that survey approved. And in for writing this survey, it took a lot of research to be able to find the best way to pose questions, what people are most comfortable with. Um, I've been doing a lot of work trying to figure out what is going to be the most helpful, most comfortable. And from what I've been able to read and understand is very direct questions. Um, Trying to give some examples too, so that way as they're reading, they're able to just give responses without second guessing themselves and trying my best to get responses in a way that does not elicit any discomfort or go against. We want the do no harm when we hand these questionnaires out as well. So there's
Are
certainly
you
research.
are you having other people execute the questions as well too?
Other people execute in what sense?
Doing the survey for you. Are you the only one doing the survey, or are there other people doing it?
So I am the only one that is dispersing it. I'm going to be using social media in specific groups, public groups for autistic people to be able to elect to take these surveys. I will not be doing it in my own clinical setting. So
Okay.
it's completely voluntary. If somebody happens to stumble upon it and want to answer it, they certainly can, but I will be distributing, collecting, and analyzing it.
Is there a minimum you're hoping for to make like statistically significant, I guess? I mean, I know it's qualitative, but are you reaching for a certain number to make this worthwhile?
Yeah, my hope is to get somewhere between 25 and 50. I think that that would be not only a manageable number, but also give a wide spectrum of answers and responses to pull from. If we don't get that, of course, it's going to be disappointing and a little bit less generalization that we'll be able to gather towards the end. But that all comes in listing those limitations, and maybe someone in the future would be able to do a little bit more extensive research.
Are you going to have support interpreting the data and translating it over to meaningful uh, information that you can use?
So part of the application to the IRB is going to be how I'm going to um, translate the qualitative data into a more thematic um, construct. So that way it's a little bit easier to decide which goes where and how to how to code those. So before I even am able to have that application approved, I'm going to be getting that done with the support of Dr. ER and also with the IRB. So hopefully by the time all of those responses do come in, I'll have the confidence to just kind of put things in boxes and go from there.
That's a lot of work. I commend you.
I'm excited. I love research. I appreciate everyone's questions. So
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to share my conceptual map. This is the foundation for my capstone project. The topic for this is developing trauma-informed developmentally responsive peer support framework for youth with lived experience of homelessness. This framework focuses on the pre-implementation phase of peer leadership programs, recognizing that although there's a growing momentum to involve youth with lived experience in leadership and systems change work, many communities haven't built an infrastructure to support them in ways that are ethically, developmentally appropriate, and trauma informed. Um, the the heart of this work is laying the groundwork for safe and sustainable peer support before any formal implementation begins. Um, Again, we'll have the systematic literature review, conceptual paper, and the practical application. For the systematic literature review, this is where I reviewed a variety of sources. I intentionally focused on literature that discussed the potential of peer support and the risks when it's not implemented carefully. The review revealed three major themes: the benefits, the risks, and the implementation gaps. The benefits are involving youth with lived experience as peer leaders. This improves relevance. It um, fosters trust, promotes youth empowerment and leadership development. The risks, the roles can expose youth to emotional labor, role ambiguity, and even re-traumatization, especially in the absence of reflective supervision and emotional safety measures. And then with the implementation gaps, there's a significant lack of youth-specific peer support models, and even fewer that are built with trauma-informed and developmentally responsive supervision in mind. The findings from this made it clear that this field needs to slow down and invest in the frameworks before placing the youth into peer roles. With the conceptual paper, this is applying the theory to be able to better understand the risks and the needs that emerge from the literature. Focusing on ecological systems theory, intersectionality theory, and trauma-informed care. This theory helped the Brenner's ecological systems theory helped me consider how youth are shaped by their environments, including systems of care, peer relationships, and social policy, and how these nested systems impact readiness and their support needs and peer roles. The intersectionality theory brought to us by Crenshaw This is the essential lens to the work. Youth experiencing homelessness often carry multiple marginalized identities, and their experiences cannot be addressed through a one-size-fits-all model. Finally, the trauma-informed care framework, this reinforces the need for programs to emphasize safety, collaboration, empowerment, and voice. All three of these integrated provide the foundation for designing the peer support program and making sure that they're ethical, equitable, and responsive to the needs of the youth with lived experience. Then with the practical application, this is where I'm proposing to propose a trauma-informed developmentally responsive supervision framework for preparing to implement peer roles for youth. This framework is grounded in the research of and theory outlined in the first two products and outline strategies that organizations can adopt prior to implementation. So this would be weekly reflective supervision, structured boundary settings, and embedded clinical oversight, not only for the youth, but also for the adult staff who will be supporting them. I've also recommend the pre-implementation strategies such as youth co-design sessions, the trauma-informed training for staff, and the use of developmental readiness tools to ensure that peer roles align with each youth's capacity and goals. If all of this is implemented well, the anticipated outcomes include lower rates of burnout, emotional distress, increased feelings of safety in the agency among the youth, and a foundation for equitable, sustainable peer leadership and homelessness system services. All these are just brought together by I'm just trying to lay the foundation for systems and programs that want to engage youth with lived experience, but recognize that the importance of doing so with care intention and clinical insight, use bridging with literature theory, applied strategy, just trying to illustrate that this Capstone journey offers potential pathway forward for ethical peer support program development. And thank you for listening, and I welcome any sort of feedback or any questions. Yeah.
What environment does this take place in? It sounded like they're at an agency or something. What about youth on the street?
This is homeless youth. So these are youth and young adults who have experienced homelessness, who are now a part of a program. They were pulled off of they were in like in a homeless setting. We have all of these programs that were just developed over the last couple of years called YHDP, which is the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program. So with that brought something called the Youth Action Board. So it's youth and young adults who are now a part of a youth action board. These youth and young adults everything is driven by the youth and young adults. So they are the ones who are picking what programs to fund, picking what, and again, this is in a rural area. I should have added that. Rural South Carolina, I should say. They are the ones who are going to be leading this, but they can't offer peer support to any of the youth and young adults who have come into the program under YHDP because they're not equipped with any sort of trauma-informed care supervision. So it would be like setting them up for failure. So it's rural youth of northeastern South Carolina.
Okay, so youth who have sought out services and those who are no longer homeless can be a peer to other people who are just coming into the system. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so looking for youth and young adults who have lived experience of homelessness. And those would be the individuals that, and that's 18 to 24.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So I am the homeless liaison for the district that I work in full time. And I was curious if people coming into the program, if you like receive referrals and what is that definition of homelessness? Like for kids that get a referral to me, it's people who lack a fixed, regular, or adequate nighttime residence. But I know like for larger cities that have HUD, or different subsidized housings, like you have to be on the street for 24 to 48 hours before they consider you homeless. So like you guys getting referrals from schools for like seniors who have been unaccompanied and are considered that under the Department of Education, and then they can qualify for this program, or do they have to actually be like on the street um, to
Yeah,
qualify?
we've taken into consideration obviously the HUD's definition of program or HUD's definition of homelessness, which is literally homeless on the street, in a place not meant for human habitation. But we also understand that couch surfing, individuals who are, room sharing, hopping from place to place. So, with our youth and young adults experiencing homelessness, we don't really have a criteria of who can fit that. Mainly because this is brand new. We don't really have anybody. This is our very first time getting funded for this program, so the criteria is pretty flexible. The only thing that would probably exclude somebody would be their income. If they had like a high, if they were above the income threshold, then they wouldn't qualify. But because we have the funding and because they have the availability and the space, uh, the definition of homelessness kind of it's very flexible right now. And even when it's not flexible, there's something called the coordinated entry system, and I don't know if you're familiar with that, but when they go into the coordinated entry system, that whole population just gets prioritized because we have specific funding for those youth.
Do you have funding for outreach as well?
For this particular program, we do have funding for outreach. So we have it's called a youth homelessness. She's called a help navigator. So she is the one that she's created an Instagram. She's going out there, and it's actually our youth and young adults right now who are part of the Youth Action Board who are conducting outreach as well. So they've gone to various places, soup kitchens. They've gone to the homeless shelters. They followed around our veteran service outreach as well as our HUD outreach at the organization, and they table wherever they are. So it's kind of included with their Youth Action Board role. So they are recruiting for individuals to be a part of the Youth Action Board, but they are also getting the word out there that they need individuals to be part of the peer support program as well. And recruitment also, outreach for this type of program can come from those who are in the transitional house. They have a presentation that they present and whatnot to be able to help get the word out there that this exists. But for the most part, this is all very brand new. We just started rolling majority of this out in January after the federal funding freeze. So yeah, it's all fairly new.
Do you have, sorry to keep asking questions, but it's a big interest for me. Do you have services for those who want to maintain homelessness?
Yes, and that's where the help navigator, because we understand that individuals don't want to have the responsibility, and that's where our help navigator comes in. And we also have several different there's places around the main office in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. It's called like a coffee shop. It's literally called coffee shop. But there is a person in there who provides ongoing support. There are different places called there's a place called the Lighthouse Ministries. There are a few resources scattered around. It's typically our outreach team that follows those who want to maintain homelessness. And that's what the peer support program is supposed to do. It's supposed to be there for those those youth and young adults who haven't been connected to services and who don't want to be connected to services, but still have some sort of a link in if they wanted a link in. Because we found that where a lot of our youth and young adults, they don't want to, they're scared. It's more of like a handout. They feel like it's a handout. They don't want to seek the help. So we're trying to find a way to keep them engaged and interested, and having somebody who has had lived experience can help keep them engaged and interested by offering somebody who has the lived experience and the peer support training.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This might help you a little bit. So here in Georgia, we have in Northwest Georgia, we have the Resilience, Independence, Success, and Empowerment Program. So the RISE program. And that program houses individuals, I think it's 18 to either 24 or 26 who have experienced homelessness. And it's the same thing. So like it's been around for a while, but if your stakeholders ever needed more stakeholders to talk to about how they do different things or how they bring in apartment complexes or rental agencies that help with these living programs. Like, if you ever need a contact, I know the director, and I'm sure she'd be happy to share. Because it's always great. You never know where these teens are going to end up. So you could tell them, like, if you find yourself in Georgia and there's a similar problem, there's a program for it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thanks for everybody's questions. Very helpful feedback. Well, if there are no other questions, I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for presenting your capstone proposal and your products. This has been a very wonderful learning experience. So yes, thank you.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. I'm so glad we were able to ask questions and learn about each other's products and get some feedback.